Turned it on.
Do you have the closed session minutes in your folder?
Need to fix that clock.
Okay, it's 6:30. I'll call the regular meeting held Township to order. Roll call.
Mike Coddington,
Here.
Sue Doss,
Here.
Jonathan Hohenstein,
Here.
Matt Counts,
Here.
Bob Wilson,
Here.
Tim Bull,
Present.
Shane Fagan.
Here. Please join me in pledge to the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Call to the board any additions or subtractions to the agenda?
Mr. Supervisor, if I may.
Yep.
First line of topic, I would just like to pass along some information I believe will pertain to the supervisor report regarding code enforcement officer. If you would like to take one of these and pass them along to each board member, if you could. Jonathan. And the same. Thank you. The second is a motion for an action. Here in front of me, I have a resolution to dismiss the ticket issued to the American Legion. I will pass that along so the board could review it. I would like to make the motion to add discussion of the removal or the dismissal of the American Legion ticket by resolution.
Okay. Question on that.
Yes, sir.
We did this a couple of months ago as a motion.
As a motion,
And
that
it was
is
discussed here that this board does not have the power to remove that ticket.
it was discussed that, but I don't believe that to be fact. I believe that was a statement made that the ordinance wouldn't allow you to. I believe the zoning administrator as well as the code enforcement officer is subordinate to the board, meaning the board has the authority over those roles. I would also propose that in past meetings, we have made a motion, taken a vote, and it wasn't liked, and it was just put right back on the table. So on 2 counts, I would say the board does have the authority, and on the second account, just because we discussed this before, I don't believe that means we can't discuss this again.
Okay.
And by resolution this time.
Can
So
I
will-
put it under unfinished business and just call it the American Legion update or report or something?
I would be agreeable to
Okay.
that. And I will pass.
Unfinished B would be American Legion. Okay. Any others for the agenda? I would like to remove 5B, not remove it, but postpone it to the July meeting. We've been given information today of a rebuttal to that, so to keep it all together in one thing. If there's any objections to moving that to next month. Okay. Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make that motion to approve the agenda.
Support.
Motion by Doss, second by Fagan. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Approval of the minutes of the regular board meeting from May 12th.
Move to accept the minutes for the regular board meeting of May 12th as presented.
Support Bowl.
Motion by Hohenstein, seconded by Bowl. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I oppose.
1. Okay, motion passes. 5C, 2025-2026 budget meeting, May 12th.
Move approval. Support.
Motion by Counts, second by Hohenstein. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Closed session meeting minutes. Everybody got a chance to see those? Thank you.
Move to accept the closed session meeting minutes from May 12th as presented.
Support.
Motion by Hohenstein, seconded by Doss. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Call to the public. Mr. Mills.
John Mills, 1750 Oak Grove Road. I'm within a day or two of signing what's called an option agreement with a solar company. And don't panic, because the farm we're gonna sign up is in Osceola Township, not Howell. The two companies that I've been working with, and by the way, I've damaged a lot of brain cells over this and never done more research on a subject than I have on this one. The two companies I've been talking to are Sunvest out of Ohio and Verisun out of Illinois. The question I ask both of them is, if I sign this option agreement, what are the chances that you're really gonna build a solar installation on this farm? And the answer from both of them was, it depends. Okay, it depends on what? It depends on legislation currently going through the process in Lansing. And if that legislation goes one way, these guys are predicting that the chances of having a solar installation on one of my farms is better than 50-50, and that solar in the state of Michigan is going to really take off. If this legislation doesn't go the way the solar guys want it to go, then it kind of dies. Okay. I was visiting one day, not too long ago, in the shop in my barn with Trustee Wilson. And when we visit in the barn shop, we solve a lot of the world's problems. And I said to Mr. Wilson at one point, I said, do you know anybody in Lansing? Because I kind of wanted to see what was going on with what that legislation and which way it was leaning and so on and so forth. Well, he said he thought maybe he knew somebody. So a couple of weeks went by, and 2 weeks ago, last Saturday, in the afternoon, my cell phone rang, and the person on the other end said, this is State Legislator Jason Wolford. I'm pulling into your driveway. Are you available? And I was. So into my house, we went to what we call the sunroom. It's a nice place to visit. And I said, I want to talk about solar. How much time do you have? Well, 15 minutes. Then he said that he had co-sponsored this legislation, so he was very familiar with the subject. 2.5 hours later, he was on the road. He and I liked him a lot. I think maybe he liked me, and we kind of bonded. That was kind of a cool experience. I guess the bottom line is, I want to publicly here at this meeting thank Trustee Wilson for his efforts to make that happen. Wouldn't have happened with, I'm not sure what all he did. I know he sent emails and did things to connect Mr. Wolford and I appreciate that. Among the many subjects that Mr. Wolford and I discussed was the censorship of Mr. Wilson by this body. His words were, that was a travesty. Thank you. Do you have any questions?
John,
It-
Mr. Supervisor, I just have a question on the two companies, the names of those. Have been
Sure.
asked, John.
John, you got the name of the two companies again you're working with?
Hey, Sunvest? Sunvest?
Sunvest and Verisun.
Verisun? Verisun. Got you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Anyone else for call to the public? Seeing none, we'll go to unfinished business, Howell Mason LLC versus Howell Township.
That's just informational.
Okay.
One quick question. As I gather, and probably Jonathan, you're, I think, the most connected with this. From the brief at the end, the motions, everything was denied by the courts, and this is pretty much the end of the line for Mug and Bops. Is that kind of what I gather, or could we bring everybody up to par here on what's going on with that lawsuit? And I shouldn't even say Mug and Bops. It's
So there's two different
Oh, Mason.
lawsuits. They're very similar. It's over the same issue. One of which was denied at the local district court here, and they've appealed it to the Court of Appeals. The Court of Appeals denied to hear it. They've appealed that to the Michigan Supreme Court. We're waiting to hear back on that case.
okay.
On this one, it's still playing through the local court. And, there's a lot of back and forth on stuff, but no, it's not done.
It's not done.
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Move on to unfinished business B, American Legion.
So in front of you, I believe, has it been passed down? Does everybody have a copy of the resolution?
Yep.
Thank you. In front of you, I believe we have a solution here to bring an end to what is just going to be a lengthy, expensive learning curve here. I believe this is a good opportunity for the township to save face here. I believe maybe some mistakes were made along the way, and I would like to propose that the board take a deep consideration into how the public views us. And I understand Mr. Bowles' point that he doesn't feel like the board should have the authority to override the zoning administrator or code enforcement officer, whatever be it, but I believe we do have the authority, and I just think this is a travesty, kind of to resemble what Mr. Wolford said about this board. I would really like to see this ticket go away. So I would like to make a motion, or I would like to make a motion to pass the resolution to dismiss the ticket issued against the American Light Legion Post 141.
Is there support?
I'll support that.
Motion by Fagan, seconded by Wilson. Discussion. I guess first and foremost, the resolution's no different than what we had as a motion. And if the board passes something to make the ticket go away, the violations still exist. So that doesn't solve it. I guess the most important thing, I'd like, if Jonathan's willing to go through the history of where we're at. I agree with you that it's a travesty. It should have never happened as far as going this long. As soon as the American Legion got the ticket, they ignored two letters. I guess it'd be better to let him go through it. But their legal counsel won't talk to us. They won't allow us to talk to people at the American Legion. When the adults can't come to the table and negotiate a simple thing like this, that's where the problem is. But
Quick question maybe before Jonathan takes over. How come this hasn't just gone to court at this point? It seems
because we're
like-
trying to save face.
Isn't there a timeline though, once a ticket's issued that,
Not on the first ticket.
oh, is that
But-
right?
He can answer that better. That's his job.
So you want a history of the
Sure. Let's,
Like
Okay.
from the start, how it
From,
all came
okay,
about.
all right. This was probably in January or February of 2024. Trustee Wilson and Mark Epley, who I believe was the commander at the time of the Legion, came into the township and talked to the former zoning administrator about what they needed to do to add parking on at the Legion. Joe told them what they needed. They claimed that they had approval from MDOT. Joe asked for it. Joe had subsequent conversations with Mr. Epley. I would say probably April would be my guess. Maybe it was March. I don't have the dates in front of me. So in April thereabouts, we got a complaint from someone, and to refute what Mr. Wilson said in his letter, it was not Mike. We got a complaint about the activity and everything that was going on at the Legion, of which we didn't know anything. So we do what we normally do, and we looked into it. And what did we find but all of Mr. Epley's equipment out there with huge piles of dirt, moving all sorts of stuff around. You know, we tried to talk to Mark at the time, but he wasn't there. One of his workers was. I would say it was maybe May that a ticket was issued, or a letter, the first letter went out, and then June, a second letter would have gone out. I believe it was September that we finally issued a ticket because we never heard anything from the Legion. And then, I mean, you guys were here for the meeting when Tara Pearson, who we understand to represent the Legion, was here. I would say, I would actually answer Shane's question as to why it's gone on so long, is that once they had an attorney, we asked our attorney to reach out to their attorney and try to see what could be worked out. And, you know, it wasn't until recently that Mike and I found out that the attorneys, Tara, is no longer communicating with our attorney. And essentially their position is that we didn't do anything wrong and we're not going to change anything, is essentially kind of how it boils down. Normally, I would say in the process of things, if people are willing to work with us, then we're willing to work with them. We're willing to give them time to correct whatever the issue is. But I would say that that's fallen apart, right? Knowing now that the American Legion is no longer communicating with our attorney, I would agree with Shane in that sometime soon something's going to happen. We have to move it forward in some fashion, since the Legion's position is that they're not going to correct it. And just for the record, what the correction is to remove the asphalt millings that have been put in there, get the dirt back in, and put grass seed over the top of it. So, you know, that's the remediation that the township is seeking. We've only issued one ticket. I know I've been told that they're being ticketed daily, weekly. I'm not sure exactly how that information is getting out there. There's been one ticket issued, and that's where we stand.
okay.
Quick question, Jonathan. There seems to be a lot of emphasis on the MDOT's approval, that Joe had reached out or the township had reached out. If MDOT did give approval for that, would this go away?
So we have communication from MDOT that says that they did not give approval.
Okay, I understand that, but we were going to allow it if MDOT allowed it, is kind of how I'm taking this.
So the Legion is a commercial entity, which we treat differently than, you know, residential. If you wanted to add on to your driveway in some fashion, we would treat that different than if the American Legion wants to add on to their parking lot driveway. So being a commercial entity, they have to go through site plan review. So
Okay.
if MDOT gave approval, then that's just one part of going through site plan approval to do what it is that they want to do.
So in a residential aspect, if one wanted to expand their drive, they wouldn't need any kind of approval, is what
So
you're, to contrast what you just said.
It depends on what you're doing. As long as you're not moving where your driveway is, then I would agree with you.
Okay. My motion still stands. I would still support the resolution if there's no other.
Yeah, it's still open for discussion. Any discussion?
I do have a question for you.
Yes,
Can you prove, because I agree with what we discussed before, which is that we don't have the ability to actually waive this ticket as a legislative body. Can you provide the information that you have that says that we can?
Well, on the contrary, I haven't been able to find anywhere that says the zoning administrator has unilateral authority over the board. So, and yet I believe you had mentioned that the ordinance says so, and I haven't found that. So I would ask you the same question, that what evidence is there that the board can't? I do agree it's a unique situation. That's all.
Yes.
Just to clarify first things, conflict of interest. Both myself and Trustee Wilson are members of the American Legion. We're both veterans. I've been involved with this parking lot situation since summertime. I've talked to people involved. I've talked to Mr. Epley. I offered to do a similar resolution back in March, I think, when the ticket was dismissed. But before we go any further, I want to declare the conflict of interest, and does anyone have any problems with it on the board?
Do you sit on any sort of
I do not.
board at the Legion? Okay.
I do not, and I feel I can be an impartial member
What
of
about
this
Mr.
board.
Wilson? Do you sit on any boards there?
Can you speak into the mic, please?
No.
So what about the fact that you were partaking in putting that in?
I had stopped by the parking lot. Well, Mark Epley, Bobby Bright, and one other guy was there that I don't know his name, and there was two guys that pulled in an MDOT truck, and we were talking, and they said, as a general rule of thumb, we don't care what you do on right-of-way property as long as you don't put anything permanent. No cement, no buildings, no nothing like that. And then he brought up another example down in Green Oak Township. There's a church that uses, right-of-way land as part of their playground. It's just, they're not gonna put it in writing, but they don't care what you do. They just don't. I mean, as far as asphalt millings, he said, that's no more than dirt to us. And this conversation did take place right up in a parking lot, and shortly after, me and Epley came in and talked to Joe about it.
But Joe told you the right way to handle it.
Well, I mean, he demanded an official print and all this happy stuff, but I mean, basically, I mean, he was just letting them know that this is what we're planning on doing. The MDOT said it was okay, and he contacted the guy at the Drain Commission, whatever, I can't remember his name, the guy that does the silt fence stuff. He didn't have a problem. He's the one that actually said, just let the township know what you're gonna do. So that's why we came here. So it happens all the time. People do things on right-of-ways that's not permanent, and it happens all the time. They're just not gonna put it in writing.
Do we have this person's name that did this, said this?
What's that?
Do we have this person's name or who gave this permission?
Ask Mark or Bobby. I just pulled in because I seen them all gathered out there.
Okay, any other discussion?
Are we clear with the conflict of interest?
Uh,
Because I have
Mr.
additional discussion, that's why I'm asking.
Mr. Bull, I would expect you, if you feel like there's a conflict of interest, to remove yourself or abstain and not rely on the board's view of the potential
I think that might
conflict.
be I think you're supposed to declare it to the board, and the board is to
You are
decide.
supposed to declare it, I
Yes.
would say, yes, but I think you should make a judgment call upon yourself.
So bearing that in mind, I always say that our past history, we're 7 different people. We came from 7 different backgrounds. My history is when I stood on the thin blue line, if there was ever a politician that came up and told me to cancel my ticket that I wrote, I kind of took offense to that, which is how I took your motion to dismiss the ticket, because I look at this as a legislative body. We were not there, we did not see it. So I'm not saying that's the correct way, but that's my experience, because I respect the law of order, and there's a process for that to happen. And I don't think that it was arbitrarily for the township board to dismiss the zoning administrator, whoever decision it was, that violation. So I have also done a lot of research on it, and you're right, it's an odd situation, because whether or not a township board can, I look at it as 3 separate branches: legislative, executive, and judicial. So the violation in my eyes maybe should be adjudicated in court, because that's who takes care of that. But the research that I have found, it's just a gray area. I don't know, and nobody has been able to show me that the township board has the authority to do this. But no one's been able to tell me we don't either. So, can anybody clarify that? Has anybody found anything, case law, anything?
No. The only thing I go off of is that the violation is still there. Whether we excuse the ticket or not, the violation is still there.
So I did do some research, and I went through Michigan Township Association, and they do have a template of board policies. I think, and on part of that, keep in mind, this isn't, to our knowledge, we don't have this in our township, correct?
Have what?
A board policy, what the policies are for the township board through MTA?
I'm not familiar
Okay.
with it. I've seen it, but I don't know
So
that
there
we
is a,
may have adopted it at some time over
okay.
X amount of years, but
So there is a policy within their template that says the township board reserves the authority to authorize and direct the course and conduct of any lawsuit, litigation, claim for injunctive relief, writ of mandamus, or other legal proceeding notwithstanding its initiation for extenuating circumstances. That in itself doesn't mean anything to this board, I don't think, but it gives me a direction that someone puts in a policy in the township association.
So that would be something that would be adopted by the board, is that what that is, Mr. Bull?
If that was the direction of the board to adopt, Michigan Township Association puts these out there. Whether or not we adopt them or any other township adopts them, I would assume is up to them.
What was the headline of that, board policies?
It's MTA Township Board Policies. I can forward it to you in an email. It's a 10-page document. I only copied 1 page with the 1
That's
paragraph.
fine, if you would, thank you.
So, with that being in mind, I've said from the beginning that the purpose of our interference with the American Legion was to stop their actions. And I believe they've stopped putting the parking lot in, which is what I believe they might have been intending. It might have been done improperly because somebody came to the township, they were told they couldn't do something, and they went and did it. That doesn't make it right. However, the action was stopped, the dirt was taken away, the equipment was moved. Right now, we're dealing with millings in the ground over dirt. Is it worth pursuing as much as we have? I don't believe so, but that's my opinion. That would be my vote if I could make one.
and I guess I would question pursuing it. We really haven't pursued it. We were looking for a line of communication. The 2 letters were the attempt to make communication. The ticket was the 3rd line of saying, please communicate.
Sure.
We got communication, and then communication was been cut off ever since. So, I mean, at a certain point,
That does make it difficult, doesn't it?
where do we say that our tickets and our rules have no value? I mean, I want this to go away as bad as everyone
Can.
else.
So how do we make this go away? I'm asking in general, because
Communication. Communication from the Legion would be ideal. If their leadership wants to come in with their lawyer and we bring our lawyer in with our leadership, we can solve this. Until that
I
point,
believe that's what we were attempting to do before the attorneys got involved, and once the attorneys got involved,
we were
all
done.
communication stopped.
Yep.
So I have one other question. Is there a reason, and Shane, since you're presenting it, I'll ask you why this information wasn't submitted so we would have plenty of time to review it? I mean, I believe the cutoff for the clerk was last Tuesday, so it would have been posted on the agenda on Thursday. So we would have had time to, because who actually wrote this resolution, do you know?
No, it was not me.
Okay.
But I did go through, fill in the appropriate dates, and made sure it was valid before I brought it forward. Why I did not get it issued is, I would say, personal reasons, and I won't dive into that, but I would have very much liked to have had the time to get it to you sooner.
So
And I apologize for
to be
not
fair,
doing so.
I would have liked to have the time to look at it. I know the agenda doesn't get posted till Thursday, but it would have been nice to have been able to review the material before sitting down here tonight.
And I had seen this some time ago, and I believe Mr. Wilson had forwarded it to the board already, or forwarded it into the township, so I thought it was gonna be on the agenda. So when the packet came out, it was not in there, so.
So it kind of gives the appearances when this stuff is all thrown up here last minute. Because people have come to me and said, do the right thing here. And my response is, do the right thing legally. So how do we get there from here is what we need to figure out. But to throw all this in at the last minute and all the backroom stuff that's going on, which the public may or may not know about on social media, is kind of the same thing the Good Old Boy Club gets accused of doing. So.
Well, that's your opinion.
That's absolutely all it is. So.
I appreciate your opinion, Mr. Bull.
But I would like to throw it out there. How do we move forward from here?
I don't see why Hohenstein can't just drop the ticket. I mean, he drops tickets every day.
I'm sorry, Mr. Wilson, can you clarify that, please?
What's that?
Can you clarify that when you say he drops tickets every day? Can you please?
He does.
Okay, I'm sorry, what do you mean by that?
Well, let's take Chuck, for example, in the camper. You know what I mean? He made a deal with him, you move the trailer, I'll come take a picture of the trailer being gone, and we'll drop the ticket.
Was there a ticket issued for Mr. Francesco?
Not to my knowledge.
So what?
A violation.
What you're actually saying is what the township board intends to do, which is work with residents. That's what the zoning administrator does, is he works with residents and businesses within the township to try to work through the violation prior to issuing a ticket so that we can come to resolution without having to go to court. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying okay, let me just use a different word. He drops violations every day.
A ticket's been issued. I think it's something different in that
Erase
regard.
it
So
from ticket.
let me explain maybe a little more of the process, right? So someone complains, we investigate the complaint. If the complaint is valid, then we move forward. And that means writing a letter, sending it to the property owner, and trying to gain compliance voluntarily. And so we will issue up to 2 letters generally. And if we either hear nothing or the answer is, I'm not going to change it, then you're going to get a ticket. And if we've issued tickets and we have waived them. If people are willing to remediate the violation, if they're unwilling to remediate the violation, or there's just no communication that indicates you're going to remediate the violation, then we move forward with the ticket. So have tickets been waived? Yes, they have. Chuck never received a ticket. He received
Violations.
letters. He received a letter.
I corrected myself.
You received a letter, and he corrected the violation. The fact that he violated again, right, and someone complained, we looked into it, sure enough, trailer's in the front yard again, gets another letter, right? So, I mean, this is the way the process goes. So we're not waiving things for no reason, we're waiving things because we got compliance.
So basically, in your mind, it's remove the gravel or we're not talking.
I think that is the position under the zoning ordinance. They did something, the Legion did something they weren't supposed to do. They did not go through the right process, right? You're supposed to go through site plan review for anything that's commercial. They didn't go through site plan review.
Is that
Right.
is that what you recommend they do?
If they want to attempt to go through site plan review, we would welcome that. If that's a possible resolution for the Legion, I think that would be a welcome path forward. I think there are going to be some hurdles in trying to do that, but that is absolutely one path forward.
I mean, just like, you know, there was a construction company come in here and they were having trouble getting the railroad company to give them permission to go into their ditch. Do you remember that? You
How
remember?
about Chestnut Development?
Yes.
Was it Chestnut? Okay, so, you know, they come in here and they told the entire board that, you know, we've tried to get a hold of the railroad, you know, and they just don't give out written permission to, you know, trespass on their property to remove the logs and stuff that was clogging the drain. Well, this board gave them the head nod to move forward with it. You know, they.
This board, but somebody
No.
else that sat on the board at that time then.
Who,
No,
no,
you were here.
no, this board didn't give them the approval to do anything. That organization did it on their own accord. Let's be very clear.
There was a head nod.
There-
you know what I
no,
mean?
no,
There
no,
was
no.
There was no taking nobody to court.
This board doesn't have that power
No.
to give them approval to do things on the railroad's property.
I believe what Mr. Wilson is trying to say, this board gave them their site plan approval.
This board doesn't do site plan approval.
Can we go back to the issue at hand, please, Mr. Chair?
It is the same issue. It's, you know,
We're
how they
talking
treat
about
these
a-
people versus these people.
We're talking about, we're talking about the American Legion, not a railroad company and a development company of somebody who develops apartments and condos and things like that.
Why didn't you give Chestnut a ticket if you knew they were going to be trespassing?
Is there
on-
anything more further regarding the resolution for the American Legion?
Mr. Chair, I have something to say.
Yes.
I would agree with Mr. Fagan. I would agree with Mr. Bowl. I would agree with yourself that I think this has gone on way too long. I think it's unfortunate. I think that it's a little bit of a shame that there hasn't been any communication. As Jonathan has stated, with letters that go out, when there is communication, then those issues, I should say, if there continues to be improvement, those violations, as Mr. Wilson had called them, go away, right? Because things are remediated. And the fact that there hasn't been any communication, or the fact that there hasn't been any interest from the Legion to have a conversation with the township about how to remediate it properly, that's disappointing. So I would actually like to see a way forward with this that is positive, so we don't have to do this resolution, because I think if as a board we start dismissing tickets simply because, then we open the door up to other things that could come down the line where someone says, you did it for the Legion, why don't you do it for XYZ? Mr. Wilson is continuously saying, treat everybody fairly. Who's to say another situation comes up 6 months from now or 12 months from now and this comes across our desk again? So I would actually like to see them come through site plan review. They are a commercial entity. They have that responsibility within the township to do that. If there is something going on with MDOT that was like, hey, we're not going to tell you no, but we're not going to give you written permission, I think we need to figure out how to handle that situation and find a way to move forward with that so that we can appropriately make a path forward with the Legion and hopefully remove the ticket in a more appropriate way via remediation or acceptance of this parking lot through site plan review.
If I may, just hopefully one last thing. I think that at the end of the day, the fact of the matter is the violation is not on the American Legion's property. It's on MDOT's property. If this were any other neighborly dispute, I don't want to get into hypotheticals, so I'll save that. I believe the township would issue the property owner the ticket where the violation is present. I may be incorrect there, but I believe that would be
I wouldn't disagree
Typical
with you if there wasn't evidence
fashion.
showing who did it.
Has the state complained?
No.
You've called them and, I mean, you told me you've called them 3 or 4 times.
Yep, and we have emails.
And they haven't complained at all or, you know, told you to have the American Legion get that stuff off there or nothing like that?
Nope.
So clearly they don't have a problem with it.
And your point is?
The
Whether,
state don't have a problem with it, that, just like they told me and Bobby Bright and Mark Epley.
I mean, my comment to that would be whether MDOT has a problem with it or not is kind of immaterial into the fact that they violate the township ordinance.
Do you have the right
Here's-
to give the American Legion a ticket on state property? I mean, you can go back and forth on this, you know? But it seems to me like you guys just wanna win, period. It's all about wins.
this.
If we wanted to win, we'd be in court already.
Well,
We
I'm
are
just
trying to
saying, I'm
solve
just telling
this.
you how it looks to me.
No,
I mean,
you're incorrect.
that's a really good point.
So, Mr. Chair, if I could, Shane, do you know if this resolution has been vetted legally with anybody?
No.
It is
I would
not.
say it is not.
And do we have?
It was asked to be held, not to be brought tonight, because it was late to the agenda, so.
Shane, would you be amicable to tabling this until there was a legal review before a vote?
I think that would be a wise decision. I would be amicable to it. Before we do, I have one last suggestion. Perhaps we should issue, the zoning administrator, should issue the ticket to MDOT and let them handle it.
So I think we're getting into the weeds and we're splitting hairs because part of that land that was probably, I don't know, Jonathan, maybe you can explain, was part of that land that was tampered with part of the Legion property? I'm not exactly sure where the border or property lines are.
It's kind of
6
hard to
inches.
say. The American Legion has numerous variances that have been granted by the township in the past. And so they get something that really no one else does, and they are pretty much paved to their property line. So I would say some of it probably is, but you know, most people have to have a buffer around their property and they don't get to do what the Legion has done. So I don't know exactly where the stakes are, but I would say if there's any, it's a little bit.
But there could be some.
Yes.
Well,
Which
Laura has ordered a survey, just so everybody knows.
Okay. Well, see, it would be nice if we did have conversation with the Legion, and I understand once the attorneys get involved, no one really wants to, but we need to. We need to have some communication to move forward with this,
Okay.
and stay out of court.
So we have a motion and seconded for the resolution. Now there's discussion of tabling it. So I guess if you want to rescind your motions, that'd be fine. Or if we want to vote on this and make a second motion to bring it back. I would leave that to the motioner.
I will rescind this. I will rescind the motion and make a motion to table this until.
Again, Mr. Wilson, are you in favor of tabling this or rescinding? Okay. Okay, now you have a motion.
I will make a motion to table this until we have a legal opinion, if that is what needs to be done, or is that done in the rescinding? I will make a motion to table this until we have legal review of the resolution.
Can you table something you've rescinded?
Excuse me.
I think we still need a vote to table it, right? Because there was a motion.
I
We need a
believe
vote on
so.
that. So let's vote on that. Okay? All those in favor of rescinding the motion?
Oh, excuse me. I see. what
Right?
you got
No?
wrong. Yeah,
No?
very wrong. Aye. We
So
never
does he need to make a motion to rescind it, or can he just rescind his motion?
That's a good question.
Okay.
We'll accept that. Just if you're rescinding it, Mr. Wilson's agreeing, and then the motion you just made was to get a legal opinion on the resolution, correct?
That is correct.
Is there support?
I'll support that.
Okay, so motion by Fagan, second by Wilson. Discussion.
I do have a question. So if we're trying to work through this, do you want to incur legal expense to have attorneys review this prior to trying to work this out? Because if we're able to work it out, then wasted time and effort. Versus, I'm not saying not to have it reviewed, it's just that if talks go nowhere, great, let's get legal review and move forward with this.
Yeah.
But,
That's actually a really good question. So Shane, you made the motion, and Mr. Wilson, you seem to be well tied into the things that are going on there, since you know that surveys are happening and such. So what is the propensity for the Legion to actually come to the table and talk to us?
There's a representative here right now.
But according to the legal, we're not supposed to be talking to their people,
I'm
so.
just telling you.
So-
I've been
Stacy's here.
told
so-
multiple
So-
times, so.
I guess, what is the, because we were instructed by legal counsel at one of these meetings here, that no one was allowed to talk to anybody. So I think the township is willing to talk about it, right? And
100%.
so what is the propensity of the Legion to do that? And then the other question would be is are they willing to go through site plan approval?
I mean, and to me, that's one of the options. If we have people that are in communication, I mean, you're both Legion members, you're both working on this stuff, so if there's any sort of relationship that you can use to try to get the Legion to come to the table so that we can have a conversation with them, I would say use all the power you've got to make that happen.
Well, I mean, I can appoint somebody right now, Stacy.
You can't appoint
Well,
someone
I'm just
when
saying, I
they
mean,
have
he's-
legal
he's
counsel.
somebody that would represent, so.
If Stacy's the one that shows up with their legal counsel, great. But we can't have that conversation with Stacy or anyone else that you appoint.
The board can't appoint.
Well, I'm just saying, I mean,
Just
there's plenty of people at the Legion that
Representative.
would, there's plenty of people that would represent. Stacy would be one of them.
Let the Legion pick that.
But the Legion's got to pick that, and then their legal counsel who has to agree to that,
Right.
right?
Okay.
So
So we still have a motion of we're getting a legal opinion on this, but now there's a question of when and where. So-
To Jonathan, to answer your question, I think discussions and a legal opinion of this could all happen in one sit down in the real world between the attorneys. So if what you're saying is time and money would be better spent by bringing everybody to the table, as you said, then no need for this if everything's resolved. But when everybody comes to the table, you know, maybe this is the first thing that says, that's put out there, would this resolve it for everybody?
I mean, if the board is interested in getting a legal opinion on this, tomorrow this gets emailed to the attorney for their review. And you incur that cost, whatever that is.
I'd rather see other options to make it go away before we spend more money fighting it.
Like what?
Well, if he has the option to make it go away, if the Legion will work with us to make it go away.
We need a representative from the Legion here, from their, one of their officers, so.
I mean, there's still one person sitting in this room that could snap of the finger, decide it's not a violation anymore though, and it's John.
That's not possible,
Why?
because it's not. That's not how it works. We've just had a half-hour discussion on why and how the violations work.
Only because you guys want the gravel removed, period. I mean, that's the only thing holding it back. What's wrong with leaving the gravel there? Throw some grass seed over it. That way it's a harder surface. They sell Christmas trees there every year.
I've offered to do that.
There's
just saying.
been no communication with the Legion, based on the Legion's attorney saying that we're not allowed to talk to them. So can we have communication? Can we talk about getting, if you want to leave the gravel there, can we have conversation about getting the Legion through site plan approval and trying
We
to
can do
find a
that.
way around the MDOT conversation so that it can be considered a 15th variance, so that they can have that space to do those things?
I'll have the American Legion, pick somebody to represent them.
Okay, so
And they need to have their legal counsel kind of come back on, and not saying that no one's allowed to speak to anybody either, right? That has to change.
So Jonathan, would it be okay if this kind of sat for a week or maybe 2 weeks before you send it off to legal and incur any expenses
I mean,
before our next
as long as the
meeting?
board's okay with it, we will attempt, again, if we
Sure.
get communication, great. If we hear nothing.
It's
until
kind of hard
the
to move
next
forward
meeting,
without
right,
a
so then-
representative from the
right.
Legion, so.
So, yeah.
Okay,
Hopefully we
so there's
can-
still a motion on the table to get legal opinion on this. Is that still
Aye.
standing?
Unless you wanna just try to have somebody from the Legion carry out a conversation.
I believe I would
Start
like
there.
to amend the motion
Okay,
to get a legal opinion on the resolution after 2 weeks of no communication is made or achieved between the American Legion and Howell Township.
Mr. Wilson, are you in support of that?
I am in support of that.
Okay. Everybody got that one?
Yes.
Roll call.
Doss,
Yes.
Wilson,
Yes.
Fagan,
Yes.
Cottington,
Yes.
Hohenstein,
Yes.
Counts,
Yes.
Bull.
Yes.
Okay. New business, credit card system.
So the township uses 2 credit card companies, processing companies, to process the township's credit card payments. One of them is specifically online. The other is what we do at the counter. And the company that we use at the counter has decided to raise their fees. Let's see if I can find it. They are raising their interest rate to 3.5% over 2.75 currently. And so this prompted us to reach out to, our software company now does offer a credit card processing application. And that is what is before you today from BS&A. Their rates are better than the 3.5%, which our current operator does. They're still not great. I mean, it's the fees are still, it's under 3%, but it's still a lot of money if you're paying a large tax bill or something as a taxpayer. The benefit of going with BS&A, though, is that it allows us to do more things with our software, such as currently a lot of like roofing companies or window companies will submit applications for a permit on behalf of the homeowner, but they're not from Howell, so they want to do stuff online. They want to submit online. They want to be able to pay online, and we don't have that capability. And what this, if we did end up going with BS&A, it would open up some functionality in our software where you can apply for a permit online. We can pull stuff off that they can submit things. We can put things back on there. They can go in and pay their fee once it's complete. And so there's just a more advanced, maybe more modern way to kind of do this process. And we do get a lot of these kind of permits and requests. This isn't just for people that are, businesses that aren't from Howell, but because homeowners could benefit from this too, but we do get a lot of requests from non-local businesses that are doing work to kind of do this pay online thing that we don't currently offer. So I am kind of looking for at minimum guidance or maybe an approval on switching our credit card processing company over to BS&A. If the board has any questions.
Questions, thoughts?
Jonathan, just a couple questions. So I think it's, is it Schedule A that I'm looking at
Yes. Yep.
on page, it's 44 or 45 of the packet. So are those fees that I'm looking at for credit card processing, is there a fee for the person who's paying and a fee for the municipality?
No, so there are some places where the municipality actually absorbs that fee. It's really hard for a place like us to absorb a fee because we're not charging for a service where we can just increase our price to cover that fee.
Right.
Yeah, so it is difficult, but there are places that do it. But no, we would have to buy a terminal I can't remember how much that is offhand, but that would be our sole expense, would be the cost of the terminal.
So it's roughly between 2.8 and 2.95% that people would have to pay.
Yep.
But BSNA is, or sorry, our current provider is coming back at like 3.5%, right?
Correct.
And then I see there's like a small per transaction fee added to that. Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Jonathan, are all these fees, I've never used this system, so are all these fees prominently posted? For a resident that would have to, they were trying to pay their taxes online or something of that nature?
Yeah. Online, I would have to look to see what we have online. Here, we do have a card that comes from the vendor that we use and show people, so,
Okay.
yeah.
Just, I mean, so there was no surprise.
Oh, we always tell them beforehand,
so-
yeah, because you don't want to get started and then have to cancel it, so.
Jonathan, do you see this as being a cost savings for the residents overall, over the long term?
I mean, I guess at a minimum, it's a cost savings because the company we currently use is gonna increase their interest rate. I think the other side to it is, it's not maybe necessarily a cost savings, but it's a convenience. So if people are doing a project, they can even do it from home, right? They can use this process to get this stuff through our website, as opposed to having to come in. There's still people who like to come in. There's people who think that's great. There's other people who really don't want to do it or don't have the time for it. So I can kind of see it both ways.
It would be a savings over the current solution, right, by 0.5%, right?
Seems like it.
Okay, it's your pleasure.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
I will make a motion to approve the usage of BSNA for credit card processing and the purchase of the terminal as presented in item 8A in the packet.
Support?
Motion by Count, second by Holstein. Discussion?
The purchase of the terminal, where was that? What was the terminal cost?
$415 with a dock, $415.
Thank you.
Yeah, I thought I saw 350, is that right?
That's
That's
quantity
without a
one, 350. On the second, it's a S700, the
Yeah.
stripe, is that what? It's the only one that, it's on,
It's the only
Yes.
one that's actually,
It's the only one that's included.
that's
as a
included in the
total,
quote.
yeah.
Okay.
Would that be the correct one?
Yeah, the S700 terminal, $350, yep.
Any other comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Move on to pay increases for 2025, 2026 for the budget year. So minutes from the HR committee are in here. We are not coming back with a suggestion. We left that to the board to decide. There's the history of the cost of living adjustment for the last multiple years. This does not include anything other than just the cost of living. There's no merit raises or anything else in there, so I'll leave that open to your discussion.
Just an open discussion here, Mike, to
Yep.
start.
Go ahead.
As far as a trustee salary, I personally have no reason or see no reason for an increase of salary, and I would not support that at this time, depending on what the board has to say.
I concur with that.
Okay, and then we can get to that when we do the resolution, but this is for the staff also.
Excuse me.
I know it looks like the goal is 5%, and I always just wonder, I mean, does anybody, check with the surrounding area that we live in, at what the average raises are? We had wastewater treatment plant in here saying they're gonna go between 3% and 4%. I always just wonder why it is that, here at Howell Township, we're always, 1% or 2% above everybody else.
The 5% is a budget number.
I
We
understand that.
put,
I understand.
so where's the question?
What's that?
Where's your question of the 5%?
My question is, historically, it always seems like Howell Township really takes care of themselves.
Would,
It was a comment.
Okay.
the 5% is simply set
What we could
aside,
afford. I understand
whether we
that.
use it or not.
Right, well, I just,
Is
okay, then
undecided.
5% I think is too high. I mean, the social security is only at 2.5%. I don't understand why, these people deserve more than these people out here. I
You
just
could
don't.
make that recommendation to have it at 2.5%.
That's my recommendation. For the past 2 years, you guys have given yourself over 10, right?
No.
So the 2.5 is the social security, that's just keeping them even, correct?
Correct.
Basically.
That's the cost
That's
of it.
COLA, right?
Right,
Yeah.
so I think we need to go a little higher than that.
Well, and I did some research to see what others are doing. Livingston County gave their employees a 3% raise. The county commissioners gave themselves almost a 4% raise. According to a couple of different news articles that I read, the average, this isn't for our area, but it's for 2025. One said it was 3.8 to 3.9%, and the other one said 3.5%. So that puts you firmly between 3 and 4% as a pay increase, and I look at 2.5% of that being just a cost of living increase. So if you get a 3% increase, you're really getting a 0.5% raise, and the rest is just trying to keep you equal.
But if we went 1%, it would be 3.5. Do we have any comparables for surrounding townships, or just?
We've tried in the past. It is historically hard to get information from other municipalities in terms of, data. I've even tried to participate. MTA has a portal where you can input information and try to see others, you're able to kind of filter it to try to find someone like you, another township that's like you. And there's just a very large lack of information, which is unfortunate because it makes this harder. If we had more information, it'd be a lot easier to look at what others are doing and try to make an informed decision.
Jonathan, I seem to remember a time when Mr. Mills came in after visiting Marion Township, and I believe that he asked what salaries and such were, and they provided him with all that, as well as a lot of this is public information, so I'm not following you when we say it's hard to obtain, and maybe just because we're trying to find somewhere that's comparable to Howell, but out of the 5 municipalities around here, we kind of have some similarities as far as our growth, I would say, so.
Well, I mean, just this as an example, he brought it up, so I looked into it. Osceola Township, the clerk, supervisor, and treasurer make over $90,000, and they work 3 days a week.
I think the other thing that comes in there is years of service, experience. A deputy could be, have a master's degree in, public everything, and been there for 20 years. Just getting 2% over 20 years is going to make that pay scale totally skewed compared to what we would pay somebody that's been in the job for a year or two.
Oh, we wouldn't be looking for somebody with a master's degree to serve us.
They exist.
Okay. What I'm getting at is we don't need to bring up our standards because they decided
Right.
to place themselves here.
But even just the years of service, if they'd been there for 20 years and they got 2% for the 20 years, it's not going to be a fair comparison of what we're hiring somebody for. So
I wouldn't be completely opposed to an increase for staff. I can't speak for those people, what's needed, where cost of living affects them. So I would say that I wouldn't be opposed to an increase for staff.
This is strictly for staff, correct?
Yeah.
Right now it's.
The other ones are by resolution.
So I see supervisor.
Any recommendations?
How does everyone feel about 3.75?
I think given the fact that, we are probably the most, I'll say, cost-effective township in the area from a salary perspective relative to others, I think it's very hard to find good talent. It's very hard to retain good talent, and I think we need to give them something more than that.
Okay.
You have a recommendation?
Yeah, I mean, I would suggest at least 4%.
I'm good with that.
Okay, is there a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Support.
Motion by Count, second by Holstein. Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. So now we have the resolutions. It's for the officers and trustees.
We're gonna do these one at a time.
Yes.
Do we have resolution numbers? What would be the first one?
553.
Thank you.
Which one are we starting with?
Supervisor.
Supervisor. So I will move to accept resolution 0625553 for no increase.
Support?
Motion by Hohenstein, seconded by Fagan, sorry. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Oh, I'm sorry, this is a resolution. Roll call.
Fagan.
Yes.
Doss.
Yes.
Coddington.
Yes.
Wilson.
Yes.
Counts.
Yes.
Bull.
Yes.
Hohenstein.
Yes.
Okay, resolution passes. Move on to clerk.
Move to accept resolution 0625554 with no increase.
Support, Bull.
Motion by Hohenstein, seconded by Bold. Discussion? Roll call?
Bull.
Yes.
Hohenstein.
Yes.
Fagan.
Yes.
Counts.
Yes.
Wilson.
Yes.
Coddington.
Yes.
Doss.
Yes.
On to treasurer.
Move to accept resolution 0625555 with no increase.
Support?
Motion by Hohenstein, seconded by Fagan. Discussion? Roll call?
Wilson.
Yes.
Bull.
Yes.
Fagan.
Yes.
Coddington.
Yes.
Counts.
Yes.
Doss.
Yes.
Hohenstein.
Yes.
Resolution passes, and we'll move on to trustee.
Move to accept resolution 0625556 with no increase.
Support, Bull.
Motion by Hohenstein, seconded by Bowl. Discussion? Roll call?
Hohenstein.
Yes.
Counts.
Yes.
Wilson.
Yep.
Bull.
Yes.
Doss.
Yes.
Coddington.
Yes.
Fagan.
Yes.
Yep, okay. Move on to new business C for a request of rezoning from single family to a AR. Don't
Mr.
see the applicants here. Yes, go ahead.
Is this the couple that's looking to do the, the preservation or the wildlife preservation or rehabilitation?
I think
should
it's
say?
domestic, but yeah, not wildlife, but
Oh, horses and such.
horses
that's
and
right.
goats and
Okay,
sheep. And
Thank you.
I guess, do you want to take anything on this, or is everything that's here?
Most of it's in the packet. Yep, they are looking to rezone their property from single-family residential to AR. They said it was for this rehabilitation. They are on the line, you know, right between single-family and AR. You could have gone either way with the original zoning, and this just happened to get, it was zoned single-family residential. The Planning Commission did recommend approval to rezone to AR. The county also recommended approval to zone to AR, so.
I'll make a motion to accept their parcel change. Rezoning.
Support?
Motion by Wilson, seconded by Fagan. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. ADU ordinance?
I don't know if Tim wants to take this one as the Planning Commission representative.
So this is the final version of the ADU ordinance that was recommended by the Planning Commission to come back. I see it's already been to the county and they approved it also. So when we first got this, I know it was sent down by this board, and the thought, or the thought was to create some type of affordable housing as well as everything else. We looked at that really hard, and we found a lot of obstacles as far as rentals in the backyard eventually becoming, that's what eventually detached ADUs would become, would be rentals in the backyard. We had a lot of discussions. We tried to work around that. We couldn't find a good way without creating the potential for a lot more neighbor problems and more work for our zoning administrator. But what we did decide upon was to have attached ADUs, because we got into the discussion of what is stopping a resident from adding onto their home to care for an aging family member or disabled family member. And we never could get a firm answer. So I think what we've done is make it like a principal special, what's the wording, I believe? It's a special use to where a resident can do that now. It would be attached. But they would need to come before the Planning Commission to get that. It would be a permitted special use for agricultural and single-family residential.
Okay, discussion, questions, thoughts?
I've got a couple questions, Mr. Chair.
Yep.
So, Tim, can you kind of explain a little bit more about I see that Paul has some commentary in the letter about permitted accessory use versus permitted accessory use with conditions, and if it is a permitted accessory use, the Planning Commission actually doesn't have authority over it, and it's in the zoning ordinance itself. No one has to actually come to the Planning Commission.
So that was Paul's recommendation, was that it would have been administrative approval.
Mm-hmm.
And the more we discussed that, instead of having just one person decide whether or not that was going to be appropriate, we thought it would be better to come to the Planning Commission and have 7 different opinions. It would also give neighbors the opportunity to express their concerns. I understand it's a little bit cumbersome to have to come to the Planning Commission to do that, but I believe with something like this, I think it's worth the extra effort.
So we're saying that if a resident wants to add onto their house, they have to come to the Planning Commission?
No, they want to add on to, so there was never a really fine line determination on, like, see, you can add on to your house.
Okay.
So when does it become a separate dwelling?
Uh-huh.
And at what point do they share a wall? If you put a bathroom down there, I mean, there just wasn't a good way of doing it. And I think Jonathan expressed as a zoning administrator that it was kind of an opinionated circumstance whether or not that particular incident was going to be an ADU or just an addition to a house. And there was no concrete ADU circumstance in our policy that we could do that in our ordinance. So we've essentially made that happen now, so where someone who wants to add a second residence into their home can do that.
Jonathan, what do you mean?
I think what he's talking about is if someone came in and wanted to put an addition on their house, and it had the makings of a separate unit, in the past that's been denied. The reason it's been denied is we would look at that and say, well, that's a duplex. That's not, and those are allowed in certain zonings, but maybe not in single-family residential, maybe not in agricultural residential zoning. And so that's where we're trying to find that, and the planning commission was trying to work through, well, how do we say this is okay and not? And so, because currently it isn't clear. It's more of a judgment call. If you just wanted to add on to your house and it looks like it's just a living room, we would issue that permit. If it looks like it's a separate unit, we would deny it.
But aren't we making it clear by putting this ordinance in place? I don't want to put undue burden on residents, right? That's why we put the ordinance in place.
I would definitely say that even if the board decides to move forward with this process, I feel like we need to amend our fee schedule so that they're not, because normally you have to pay a certain fee to go before the planning commission, and I agree with you, which is if we're going to do this, I think with this process, as opposed to an administrative review, it's essentially a bodily review. I'd want to make sure that it isn't overburdensome, especially in terms of fee. It's already going to be a bit of a burden to do this, as opposed to an administrative review. So I would say that we definitely, if this does get passed as is, that we definitely look at our fee schedule and maybe make some amendments.
Could it, sorry, Shane, I've got a couple more. So what is the purpose of having it go to the planning commission? Tim, maybe you want to.
So
I would say.
let me
Tim
try
might be
this again.
best, yeah.
So instead of having one person decide whether or not this was going to be an ADU or in addition to a house, if someone definitely wanted to do the ADU, they could come before the planning commission. There would be a public hearing. The neighbors would have an opportunity to express their concerns, if there were any. And because there was no one size fits all for an ADU, depending on the lot size, depending on the house placement, and that's what we kept running into problems whenever we tried to craft something that would be easier, like you're talking about. So to handle each case individually through the planning commission seemed to be the best way of doing that. Is it more of an inconvenience? To some, yes, but it also provides the opportunity for the neighbors and everyone else to present their case too.
I'm trying to understand. I think the ordinance as it's written has done a pretty good job of curtailing any sort of abuse of an ADU. It has to be attached, it has to have the same water and sewer, electrical. It can't be on a parcel that's less than an acre. It has to have, lot width has to be 150 feet. I think it does a pretty good job of kind of saying, of curtailing abuse. We would know that it would be an ADU based on the fact that it's got a bathroom, a kitchen, right? Those are typical things of an accessory dwelling unit. I'm still trying to understand why the planning commission needs to review that, or why residents would residents need to be, what concerns would residents have if everybody followed this ordinance accordingly?
So the issue that we were discussing in the planning commission is
Yeah.
because as you may have noticed, we have issues with our ordinances in the township.
Right, right.
So instead of creating more problems for the zoning administrator, which I feel with an administrative review, and let's say something, you know, it wasn't thoroughly vetted before it went in,
Right.
and now you are allowing 2 families on a single family parcel. So to me, it's worth the extra review that the planning commission will provide on a case-by-case basis, at the same time giving the resident the opportunity to have that ADU.
But
Instead of just blanketly saying everyone can have an ADU under those circumstances, because there's too many what-ifs, there's too much left open to the interpretation.
I mean, what I take from what Matt's saying is that if you're gonna like put guardrails up, but then if you meet the standard, you're allowed to do it, as opposed to going before this commission, having a public hearing,
Yeah.
having to explain why it is that you're asking for one. I
Yeah.
think that's your point.
Yeah, I mean, I believe it's undue burden on the residents who want to go through this. That's the concern that I have. I think if we had a more open ordinance that maybe allowed different types of things, perhaps, like if we wanted to be more flexible in how we approach the ADU ordinance, I think that would make sense, because you haven't defined it so well, right? It's kind of like developing a piece of property into a restaurant or a condo complex or something like that. There's various ways that it could be done, and therefore you want that capability to understand what those are. I think adding on potentially 1,000 square feet to the home, I don't know, I think that's gonna create some undue burden for residents to have to come into planning commission. I mean, I would absolutely agree with you, Jonathan, if that's the case and that's the way that this proceeds, the fee schedule needs to be reviewed and revamped for ADUs, because it's just another thing that we're asking residents to do. I think we did the only thing that I don't like about this ordinance is that we tell people that it has to be an acre. We're saying it's attached. It's an attached unit, but it has to be an acre. I left the planning commission, right, when the election.
They were there for part of those
So
discussions.
I remember us having that conversation of an acre if it was detached, but an acre if it's attached. I don't know.
If I may.
Yeah.
I just want to address the board. In the current circumstances with the ordinances the way they are, could individual come to the board or the commission and ask for a variance to be able to put in an ADU?
So a variance only allows you to do something that, I mean, it's still within the parameters of the ordinance, and the ordinance doesn't currently allow, because we would look at it as like a duplex, and so if a duplex isn't allowed at all, then really the variance wouldn't be something that they could grant.
Okay, so a variance, conditional use, none of those would be an option in today's, how things are structured today. There's just no way for a resident to do an additional dwelling unit without this ordinance.
I mean, I would say
Would you
that.
say
that's-
that?
I would say
don't
that's
see it
accurate.
that way. I mean, it's no different. To me, this is just a waste of an ADU ordinance, because we can already put an addition on our home.
I do kind of feel like passing this is getting back to not having one at all. I mean, it's become so restrictive. And I know the planning commission's direction, and, they've structured this thing, but I guess I'd like to hear what the board thinks of it. I think it's been a long time since the board's looked over what the planning commission is doing on this. I personally don't have a problem if someone wants to have a rental unit on their 20-acre parcel, right? Or 15-acre or multi-acre parcel, or whether it's attached or detached, I don't have a problem with it. But I certainly know that our planning commission has steered this away from having rentals, having detached units, and I would like, kind of some direction from the board, or I would expect the board to give some direction back to the planning commission and say, well, this really isn't a problem with us, or it is, and yeah, you guys you're spot on there. But I do feel like we're at the point where we might as well just not have the ordinance. If we're concerned about rentals and what an additional unit could become, then there's no way they could do it now, and if they do it, they're in violation. So I know you guys have spent a lot of time on this, a lot of time, and I don't want to take away from that at all. But I personally don't have a problem with how it was originally proposed as a solution for affordable housing or a solution for a loved one, so be it. I would like to see that pushed forward, but I do respect the Planning Commission's direction and this board's direction, so.
Mr. Chair?
Yep.
So by allowing ADUs, we're essentially allowing duplexes and single family in areas, correct? So that's why probably the extra guardrails of the inconvenience of coming to the Planning Commission. Because we are essentially adding duplexes to single family residential lots. And I think there's a lot of township residents out there, when they bought their lots, they bought it in a single family area. So me personally, I think we need to preserve that, because that's what they bought.
Yeah.
And when we're talking about putting detached units, or even maybe something of that nature, you're having neighbor issues, we're having barking dogs, we're having loud TVs. And then you're having someone putting on away from their residence next to their neighbors. So that was the whole reason, amongst the reasons why we didn't do it detached.
Yeah.
So now that we're allowing, this ordinance actually allows duplexes in a single family area. And that's why the extra guidelines are on it. Because a resident came in with an aging parent or a disabled child or something, and yes, you can come in and put an addition on your house, but it's up to the zoning administrator to decide if that bathroom makes it a duplex or not. This actually gives some guidelines and some hard and fast rules on what they can do, so.
I guess my point to go into the planning commission, Matt, would be it's worth the extra effort. I mean, if you wanted to do this and it's needed, and if we reduce the cost so it's affordable, it makes sense to have, it future-proofs it. So not knowing who the future zoning administrator is your neighbor comes in and you're the zoning administrator, and yeah, no problem, here you go. Now there's some accountability to putting the duplex in a residential neighborhood. So, you know, if it's affordable and it's worth your time, you're gonna do it right.
And it gives you a legal way to do it with this ordinance, which before, Jonathan, correct me if I'm wrong, you couldn't do it, correct? You would deny it. So this actually allows it to happen.
But I think the concern with duplexes was more around rentals, wasn't it? And this ordinance specifically says you can't, it's not allowed to be a rental. So, really?
In 10 years.
Again, it's future-proofed, that they went through the process. There's planning commission meetings, so all of this stuff, they have agreed to all of this stuff in writing. It's not just one person saying you understand all these rules. So when it does become a rental after grandma passes away or whoever, and
It can't though, according to the ordinance.
right,
Who enforces it?
Zoning administrator,
I mean,
or the code
that's-
enforcement
that's-
officer
that's-
that we have the position posted for, right?
That's true either way, right? I'm on Matt's side here, which is that if there's other guardrails you think are necessary, I think just going before the planning commission doesn't get you anything different than an administrative review would.
Mhm.
If that person's doing their job as you would expect them to, they're gonna check that application and they're gonna say, do you meet this requirement? Yes. Do you meet this one? Yes. Do you meet this one? You know, you just go down the list, and if you don't meet it, then you're denied, but you're told why. If you do meet it, then you're issued the permit. And I don't know what extra or special thing you're getting by going through this extra process.
So if if it was an administrative review and this ordinance was passed, they could go to the zoning board of appeals.
If they were denied,
If they were denied.
correct?
What do you think
At
of
what
that?
cost?
What do you think of that? Well, we can talk about the fee
That's
schedule.
$400 too.
Well, we can talk about the fee schedule, but I'm more inclined to say,
I agree the fee schedule needs to be modified for something.
I mean, I would be amenable to that, right? Treat it like an ordinance that we have where, you know, today if you put an accessory building in front of your rear yard setback, you've got to go to the zoning board of appeals, right? Because the ordinance says you can't do that. So if they're doing. Change that. Well, no, that's later on in the discussion, right? But I think I feel like that's where this belongs.
But doesn't that, if I may, Matt, doesn't that come back to what I just asked? If I want to put a building in within a setback, I would ask for a variance. If I want to add an additional unit, which would be against single-family residential's ordinance, then I would be asking for a variance, I would think. But I mean, I think there is a structure in place already.
I think the difference that I see is that you're talking about
A use versus
a zoning, right? As Tim always says, you're changing it from SFR to MFR, right? And if you have that perspective, I think that's the difference for me.
But it's actually single-family residential or agricultural with an additional dwelling unit. It doesn't necessarily turn it into a duplex. We've received numerous things from the state where, you know, there's a lot of benefits to ADUs. You know, they actually bring up property values around you and things like that. There's been plenty of polls done where a majority of the people would like to see ADUs, you know, and also, you know, detached. You know, this puts a kibosh on anybody putting up some kind of a guest house at some time. And I'm just not in favor of this ordinance. It's just putting too much restrictions on people.
I would say I liked it a lot better 4 months ago when Matt had his final, before Matt had his final seat on the planning commission.
We had
So
numerous-
what was the difference then? What was it that you liked?
Detached was a big one. I liked that we were we started out saying it was to be attached, and we had public hearing, and then we went back with, I should say, the planning commission, I felt, said, well, we can't move forward on this. We got a lot of opinions from the public, and it seemed like we went back to having detached available. So that was the biggest thing, and at the end of the day, I mean, we're like you said, we're putting out guide rails. We can't force people into following our ordinances. We can certainly enforce it after the fact, but excuse me, I'll end on that.
So, Mr. Chair, I'd just like to kind of try to wrap this up. The planning commission put a lot of time into this. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Johnston, with a 7-0 vote on this, or did we have a few against it? And the county has also approved it. I looked in there, I know we had a couple where there was a couple dissensions, but I think at the end,
Osceola Township just approved detached dwellings.
Yeah, I mean, it's not listed in the thing, but I believe you're right. I believe it was.
I think at the end, I mean,
I
because
think it
we
was.
debated this back and forth many times, and we tried to hammer it out, and those were the decisions or the recommendation we came up that came here and went to the county. With that said, I'd make a motion to accept the planning commission's recommendation for the proposed zoning ordinance amendments to regulate accessory dwelling units.
Is there support? We've had some discussion, so. but-
Motion dies.
You're willing to remove the clause that it has to go to the planning commission, knowing the fact that if someone is denied usage, it'll go to the zoning board of appeals for review.
So with all the varying situations that we envisioned, coming up from this happening, we felt that it was better to have 7 people instead of having authoritarian one person taking a look at it. Each individual ADU case would have, we'd have the opportunity for the neighbors to come in, right? Because you're gonna have a public hearing. I think without having it come before the planning commission, the neighbors wouldn't know until it was built, correct?
Right, I mean, if you allow it by right, but you put guardrails up there, then they would have to meet those guardrails.
Sure, but would the neighbors know?
No.
And that was one of the reasons to go to the planning commission.
So
Because we had 7 different people from 7 different backgrounds looking at it.
But why do we feel like it needs a public hearing? Why do we feel like neighbors need to have an opinion?
Because you're putting a duplex in a single family area?
But we're allowing it by zoning. We have an ordinance that says that they can do it.
Not yet.
I agree, but that's what we're talking
Right.
about doing. Can you explain to me, you said you had 7 different people with 7 different opinions about all the different scenarios that could happen. Can you provide me with some insight into what was your concern that couldn't be handled administratively?
Lot size, placement, where the original dwelling is on the lot, how close are the neighbors, what other structures are on the lot?
Lot size in the ordinance says 1 acre or more.
Sure.
Coverage is 20% or less.
I mean, to me, if there's a concern of everything that you listed so far could be, if it's not already a guardrail, be an additional guardrail, which is that it needs to be so many feet from any other residence, right? I mean, right now, the way it would be is that you have to fit in your setbacks, you have to fit your lot coverage. I mean, you can only be within so many feet. If you already had an accessory structure, you have to be 10 feet away from it, so you couldn't encroach on that. So, I mean, there's already things in place that so far would address your concerns.
So we did discuss the placement, how far from the neighbors, but
I would say that's more of a problem with detached. If it's detached, I would absolutely say then you would need something in there if you're concerned about me putting it right up against your house versus really close to my house, right?
Sure.
So I could understand that as a concern. I don't know.
But if it's attached.
If it's attached, then it's
obviously
literally
meets the
extending
setbacks.
the house as it exists,
Otherwise, it'd have to go to ZBA anyway, because it would meet setback requirements.
right?
So, I guess directed at Matt and kind of Jonathan, if this went back to planning commission and they removed the planning commission review and it came back to us, is that the one hang up that you have with it?
For me, it is, and if there's additional concerns, additional guardrails, additional check boxes that need to be, looked at, that is a concern, I would say then add those guardrails, add those check boxes. So yeah, for me, that is where I would stand.
Okay.
I think so, yes.
Okay.
Let me ask this question. The administrative role would be the zoning administrator who would make that decision. What if at some point in the future that wasn't a single person but a firm? Is there ever a possibility the township hires a firm to handle zoning?
It'll be the same boxes they gotta check to make sure it meets the criteria.
There's a structure,
Yep.
and I don't think it takes a planning commission to check boxes. So I would agree with Matt.
Okay. So if we're gonna send this back, if that's the only change, And
Well, I just add the caveat of the additional guardrail. So if there's.
I heard that. That was-
Well, it's just, I don't want to tell them that, I mean, we could make the one change. I would like to send it back for the consideration to make it administrative and then add any guardrails as necessary to effectuate the concerns.
Is that a motion?
So moved.
You want to repeat it for the record, please?
I don't know if I can.
Mr. Chair, roll call vote?
Yeah, well, number one, he's going to repeat his motion, and then he's got to get some support. 'Cause
Okay.
that seems to be an issue tonight.
I move to send the ADU ordinance back to the Planning Commission to remove the condition of Planning Commission approval and the special land use requirement, and to consider any additional guardrails or checkboxes to deal with concerns.
Is there support?
I'll support.
Motion by Hohenstein, second by Counts. Discussion. Roll call.
Paddington,
Yes.
Bull,
No.
Doss,
Yes.
Counts,
Yes.
Fagan,
Yes.
Hohenstein,
Yes.
Wilson.
Yep.
Motion passes. Okay, move on to vacant hydraulic drive, special land use request to allow RV storage.
So this is an individual that is looking to develop some land. They are looking to do outside storage. That's essentially all they do. They would like to store RVs on the site, and our ordinance requires a special land use permit. And so the board has the ultimate decision to approve it or deny it. The Planning Commission did approve it. The county, no, this doesn't go to the county. Yeah, so the Planning Commission did recommend approval.
Okay. Comments, concerns?
So, Mr. Chair, this was put in as a, the special use permit and a preliminary site plan together, the vote at the Planning Commission. This is correct, right, John? This same.
And that, yeah, that is the normal procedure, yeah.
So, the concern I had at the Planning Commission was the storage. We ran into an issue where this was gonna be like a contractor storage. The rezoning for the special land use permit for the storage of the RVs and trailers, I think is fine because the lot next to it allows that too. The problem we ran into it with the contractor storage and the number of storage containers, it's also gonna be put on the lot. So this is just the vote here tonight, Jonathan, just to be clear, is for the special land use and not the site plan.
So, yeah, the board only approves the special land use for the RV storage.
Okay.
This is one of those where we do have to include our findings in the motion as well at the board level.
Okay.
I will make the motion to approve the special land use request from Jewett Outdoor Storage, parcel number 470-628-100071. Based on the information provided by the applicant, staff, consultants, and they meet the following standards of the zoning ordinance. A, will be harmonious with and in accordance with the general objectives, intent, purposes, and purposes of this ordinance in terms of their uses, activities, processes, materials, equipment, conditions of operation that will be detrimental to any person, property, the general welfare of the surrounding area in which it is located due to excessive production of traffic, noise, smoke, fume, glare, or odors. It will be designed, B, will be designed, constructed, operated, maintained, and managed to be harmonious and appropriate in appearance with the existing or intended character of the general vicinity. C, will be served adequately by essential public facilities and services. D, will not be hazardous or disturbing to existing or future neighboring uses. E, will not create excessive additional requirements at public cost for public facilities, utilities, and services. And F, will not have a substantial adverse impact upon the natural resources and environment on the lot or parcel.
Is there support?
Support.
Motion by Hohenstein, second by Counts. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Call to the public.
Donnelly Chevalier, 2900 Brewer Road. Yeah, on the thing for the added dwelling on the property, now does that take into consideration that people that are purchasing land now, it's a minimum of 2 acres in order to even consider building in Livingston County now, isn't that correct? You have to have it 2 acres or you can't put a place up. And now you're gonna let everybody that's here or in the area now, or future ones, they'll be able to put an additional dwelling on there. Now, you said that it'd be, the people are in the area around them. Now, exactly what rights would they have if you had like 15 neighbors in the area and only 8 of them said they didn't want it? Could it automatically go through because, you know, that's just the way it is? Or are they gonna actually try to function this? I don't know, I don't have an acre, but I know when I built, it was legal. Now, I couldn't even build my house because I don't have 2 acres. But now you're gonna let other people move in and take a residence. And you made a good point. You said if I had 10 or 15 acres. Well, if you got 10 or 15 acres, sell 2 acres, and then they can put that housing on and they're perfectly legal then. And your tax base stays up. Are you gonna charge additional taxes for the extra family that's living there? I have no, it should be open to family members, like your immediate family. Yeah, that you should be able to do that. But when you're gonna bring in another family or couple, and they can do whatever they want, basically, because they'll be part, and then it'll be up to ordinances if they noise violation or any other violations they have. But you're allowing additional traffic, you're doing the whole thing, but there doesn't seem to be any stopgap where anybody's gonna be held accountable. And you're taking away everybody else's right that built here because they had to have a minimum of 2 acres since 1983, I think it was, that they passed the 2 acre minimum. Isn't that about right? You can't have a
1 acre.
1 acre? Oh, it's still 1 acre? Okay. So that means if you've got 2 acres, 5 acres, 10 acres, you're only allowed 1 single family dwelling on that unless you split it or it, I don't see where making an ordinance makes it all right, because it should lock people into a feeling of security. Most of the people that moved out here, they moved out here because it was country. And you were getting, some people, they come out, they want street lights and pavement. If they wanted that, why didn't they stay where they were? In my opinion. But you're putting too much, I don't know, I don't think that having another house or attached to your house for somebody, other family to live there, that doesn't cut it. I mean, that seems like it's becoming an apartment, if not a duplex, because they're not related to you, so they're a separate family, And how are you gonna regulate that? Are you gonna be able to say, "Yeah, you're not a good neighbor, we're gonna have to ask you to leave," or is that gonna be up to the person that owns the property? That's all I got to say on that, but I mean, that should be considered. Everybody moved out here, hopefully, to have freedoms, you know, but you don't necessarily have a freedom if you're gonna give it away to another family or whatever moving in. Family, that's one thing, but they're strangers. You don't know who you're getting in there until they're there, and then what recourse do you have to get them out without court orders on them? Okay, that's all I
Thank
got
you.
to say.
Anyone else for call to the public? Seeing none, we'll move on to reports. Supervisor's report, I added a ordinance enforcement officer job description. This is just a rough draft, so wanted any input on it if there was additionals you wanted added. I'm gonna take it back to the HR committee and we'll take any input that you guys want on it and then go out for advertisement.
What's wrong with Carlisle Wortman? They
I'm sorry?
offer the service, right?
They could, yes.
Be nice.
I don't think it would provide the best service for us. Yes.
So, I guess my question, Mike, would be why just code enforcement? I believe we need to address the whole deal. Would be zoning enforcement, or zoning administrator and code enforcement officer, both duties which were appointed upon approval of an HR committee recommendation. I believe at this point, the interim period is well worn out. It is time to select a zoning administrator and a code enforcement officer, or just a zoning administrator who can serve in that capacity. I believe that we should not have a zoning administrator taking votes on our township board here. I don't believe that should have ever happened, and it's time to correct that. So I would ask that not only we post a job for code enforcement officer, but a zoning administrator as well, and relieve Jonathan of that position.
Okay, any other comments?
I agree with Shane.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
this is for the code enforcement officer, which is the issue that you had on the table. Is this just in its infancy stage?
Yes.
So I know at one point we had contracted with the sheriff's department.
Correct.
Will we have an opportunity to see what the sheriff's department has available in lieu of I like the idea of having a separate code enforcement officer. I like the idea of having an independent person as a buffer between the zoning administrator and the township resident.
Yep.
We have a different set of eyes on it. I am probably partial to law enforcement because I know they stand in the middle very often, and they don't tend to take sides. That's not saying that we couldn't hire a part-time code enforcement officer that could do the same job just as well. That's why I'm just kind of inquiring, will we be able to look at both opportunities further down the line?
We could, the problem we ran in with the sheriff's department is, you know, you would have not a single individual assigned to every violation. So one person would do the initial contact, then you'd have somebody else doing follow-up. There wasn't a good method to follow it all the way through. Where I think, you know, I would take this to the sheriff's department to see if they had any guys that wanted additional hours or part-time. You know, they have some guys that are approaching retirement. They have some court officers that would probably want to pick up some, you know, additional duties. There's plenty of retired police officers in the area. So some early retirees that just are looking for something to fill their day. Additional duty that could be on here that I did not put in here that I just found out Hamburg has their code enforcement doing the inspections. So they're working like 15, anywhere from 5 to 20 hours, but average 15. So all of, you know, fence gets put in, does it meet the setbacks, that
Okay.
type of stuff. So it leaves the zoning administrator working out ordinances in the office doing those things, and it puts the code enforcement out doing multiples.
So the salary range and the benefits and the hours would all be determined at an HR meeting?
Yep, I couldn't come up with a good method of payment. If it's strictly code enforcement, there's gonna be months that there's nothing happening.
Sure.
There's gonna be months where there's gonna be 20 hours a week to make it happen. So, after talking to some of the other entities, I'm kind of leaning towards that 15 to 20 hours. I kind of like that idea that there's some consistent communication in the office and, you know, between the zoning administrator and the code enforcement person. So, but that's kind of where the HR committee needs to kind of work through the details.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Supervisor, that HR committee meeting that would set the scale and salary and such, that would simply be a recommendation that would be brought back to the board to be
Yep.
approved. Okay. I do like the idea of an entity such as Carlisle Wortman, who has a very good understanding of the ordinances, let alone our ordinances, as well as the accountability there. We may not always have the same person, but we're gonna have a firm who knows ordinances, I think, beyond anybody else's understanding as an individual. And certainly, I believe one that would understand the local ordinances better than a varying public officers or public law enforcement officers. So just one more thought, thank you.
Yeah, we can look at that at the HR committee, but I know, I mean, we know what Carlisle and Wortman charge, so I'm imagining you're probably looking at 100 plus an hour, so probably closer to 2. So, I mean, if you can pick up a retired officer that's willing to work for $20, $25 an hour or $50 an hour, I think that's something a little more reasonable. And I think response time, if they're an employee, would be improved, but we can talk to Carlisle. I'm not opposed to a contracted service, but I think having an employee that's invested in the community would be my first choice. We've looked at other methods, and this is where I'm at on it.
And then one last thing, the code enforcement officer position, that it has to be appointed by resolution per our ordinance, is that correct?
I believe so, yeah.
We have code enforcement, I think it's 238.
And that,
so-
this job description is
And this is pulled from
exactly.
that ordinance, okay.
These responsibilities are what's exactly in the ordinance.
Is there a reason why the previous code enforcement officer, being Jonathan here, was not appointed by resolution and by simply approval of a HR committee recommendation?
I would have to go back to confirm that he wasn't.
Okay, thank you, that's all.
Okay. Any suggestions to take back on this, or?
Oh, one, honesty. They need to be honest. Put that in there
Okay.
somewhere.
Any other? Okay. Any questions, Supervisor? Treasurer?
We have a couple items here. Deputy Treasurer is requesting to attend a governmental accounting webinar provided by our software company. Online seminar is $200, so I would move for approval for the Deputy Treasurer to attend the governmental accounting webinar presented by BSNA as presented.
Support.
Motion by Homestein, second by Doss. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
The Deputy Treasurer has also asked that we reapprove the Halloween event that the Township did last year. It does cost the Township $0. It's all from staff donations. Looking for an approval on the Halloween event.
I'll make a motion to approve the Halloween event.
Support.
Motion by Fagan, second by Hohenstein. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
The last item is the cybersecurity audit and assessment, which you got. And the reason for the confidentiality is to kind of reduce risk. So that's why you were sent information separately. But we do need to discuss the various options and what the board wants to do.
So Jonathan, I'm not sure if you're the, I noticed there was a variation in the quotes. Do we know why the big difference?
We don't. I mean, they don't know about the other people's quotes. So
Sure.
when Teresa went out for them, she talked to them, got quotes for what we were looking for. And we did get some information, both from Matt helped us. When I say us, 99% Teresa, almost not me at all. So I use that very liberally. Matt helped out the township and trying to curtail, trying to understand what it is we should be looking for. Teresa was working very closely with someone from CISA, which is the federal agency that's kind of tasked with this, but then with all the changes in Washington, he had to withdraw his ability to perform the service for us at no cost, which would have been fantastic. And you also have the fact that it's a federal agency doing it, and maybe some comfort level in terms of who's doing the work for us. So that went away, and so now we are looking to go to the private sector to still achieve the same goals.
So the requirements for all the agencies were about the same, and they just came back with different quotes?
Well, that's why Teresa had to put together that spreadsheet in an attempt to parse out what it is that they're offering, because of what we asked for is not necessarily what we got back. And so there are things that are included in some and not in others, and it just became very hard to distinguish between them as you're reading them. So she tried to condense it all and put it in a manner that's understandable. So I commend her for the spreadsheet.
You got any enlightenment, Matt, on?
Yeah, I mean, this is basically a security audit, right? Like, they're gonna come in and take a look at it and say, what do we, what are their areas that they feel are things that we can improve upon? Whether that be, we need to put a firewall in, we need to put VPN connections in, multi-factor authentication, those sorts of things. What kind of policies and procedures do we have around securing data, all that sort of stuff. The high end of the quotes, I would say, seem really high relative to the size of the organization that we are. To me, that seems like there's probably a little bit of remediation in there as well, right? Or they're just trying to stand on their credentials, which they have some, which is good, right? I think I think a week's worth of effort is probably about right to do an assessment for something this size. Really, the cost is going to come in when they start saying these are all the things that we need to do to implement, right? We need to change our backup policy. We need to change our administrative password rotation policy. We need to change who has access to that administrator. We need to put policies in place that talk about how we secure data. That's what's going to really change the scope of things, right?
So you see this as a small amount of money, and then the changes moving forward could be costly, but there are things that might need to be implemented in order to judge what we're told from the assessment.
Yeah, most of our stuff is the BSNA stuff that's all cloud-based. I'm not nearly as concerned about that stuff, but is there stuff that's sitting in, on our server? Do we have endpoint protection, right? That basically is a piece of software that sits on there and is always continuously scanning it for any potential attacks, right? How often are we upgrading our server operating system to remediate vulnerabilities? Those sorts of things and policies that have to be put into place, right? I think this is an assessment to see what that's going to cost.
So did you see anything in any of the assessments that was a deal breaker in terms of I wouldn't go with you, or anything that was like a, yep, this tells me that we should use you instead of the others?
I'm just trying to take a better look at it, right?
So we lean on your back. now?
Looking at this,
I mean, some of these higher priced quotes, I think they're leaning on their auditor certifications. When I really look at this, when I look at who's coming in really high. NSG, they did our website, but then again, their auditor certifications, there's nothing listed there, like, okay, I would like to see something there, right? You know, you want to follow NIST, you want to follow ISO 27001. NIST is National Information Security and Technology, or National Information Standards and Technology, right? It's basically what the federal government follows from an information technology standard perspective. ISO 27001 is a certification that you get that says you have these policies and procedures in place and you actually follow them to protect your infrastructure and your data. SOC 2 is basically a report that's provided to say how well do you protect your data. Those are the big ones, really. To say that you don't know if your auditor has certifications. I would be a little concerned.
One of the assessments provided for a 1-hour phone call, which is a pre-assessment, and then they were going to do quarterly scans for an entire year. And to me, that sounds like a good thing. Do you have any opinion on whether that is, really something that is good, or is it just something that's probably unnecessary considering what we're talking about?
No, I definitely, I love a pre-assessment, I love a post-assessment. I mean, think about this like a financial audit, only it's for technology, right? So those things are definite, right? They should be there. Quarterly scans over a 1-year period of time. Do you need that for an audit? To me, that would be more of like, you're doing that to see if you're implementing the controls that they recommended. Right? I don't know that you need quarterly. What I would say if I was looking at that is I would say, I want the pre-assessment, I want the post-assessment, I want the post-assessment phone call, I want the deck or whatever, like what we get from Brainbridge and Company on the financials. I want to see all of that. And I want to, you do a scan of the environment and so on and so forth. And then I want 1 year after that to like, make sure that we've implemented the things that we need to do.
So some of that might be unnecessary if, and again, it's either working with IT or maybe changing IT altogether and, implementing the thing. So as long as we do that, then this extra stuff might be unnecessary.
I don't know that, I think quarterly scanning is good. It makes sense to do that. It makes sense to do that once you implement the policies and procedures in place, right?
Okay. So, but if we, in 2 months, we get our report back and we need to make these 4 changes and we don't get it done for the next quarter, then the next quarterly scan is really, it's useless.
I mean, I always say this to my team. It's like, okay, you can scan every week if you want to, but if you're not doing something to remediate the scans, all you're doing is putting more on your plate that you have to go through. Like, you wanna scan, you wanna put policies and controls in place, and then you wanna continue scanning to make sure that those policies and controls are doing what they're supposed to be doing. Are they willing to come in and like do a presentation?
To the board?
Yeah.
I don't know if it was asked.
I would appreciate that.
Maybe we
Any of
narrow it down to 2 or 3, so we don't have to sit through 6
Yeah,
presentations?
yeah, that's fine. I mean, if you, I think one, if I would remove anybody who doesn't have their auditor certifications listed.
So the unknown,
Yeah.
just one of those. Two.
So 2 of the ones that are left are expensive. Of the 3 that are left, are there any on there that, when you look at it, you say, based on something other than their auditor certifications, that it would be a no? And it's not just cost-based, obviously. If it's expensive, maybe it's expensive for a reason, but
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at this and I'm trying to find out why some of these are more expensive than others. And it's not really popping out, right? Like if I saw something in there that said, this price is because we will help you implement 3 of the 5 things that we identify. And then we'll monitor that for a year. Okay. Like, that means that there's gonna be some additional costs there, right? I mean, you see some of these hourly rates, so, but I don't see it. That's why I asked if they could come in and provide a short presentation, right, to the board.
So even the ones with the unknown, they're listed as unknown what their certifications are. It doesn't simply mean they don't have them, they just didn't take the time to present it if they did.
Correct.
Which is pretty crucial if you want the job, right? Like, here's my qualifications.
Generally speaking, you're not gonna hire somebody to do a cybersecurity audit if they're not certified in cybersecurity.
So the other one that maybe stands out was the cybersecurity liability insurance. One of those couple that we were left with is an unknown whether they have cybersecurity and liability insurance. I don't know the importance of that, but
I don't think that would
It's-
preclude somebody from coming to give a presentation. You could always ask that question.
oh yeah, no, I wouldn't say so. Just they're doing an audit up front. I don't know that the liability insurance is important until their system fails, right? And then we're going, well, why'd it fail? And we certainly, if they don't have the insurance to cover them, that's
Correct. Yeah.
a bad situation, right?
That's correct, yeah. I mean, there's different levels of cybersecurity insurance, right? This is liability insurance, so this would be like saying, we implemented all the things that you told us to do, and still we got hacked, quote unquote, right? You need to come help us out, right? Like, and then their insurance policy kicks in to pay for those things.
is there anything you see in the audit scope and methodology that either, again, says a yes or a no for you?
As part of an audit,
I just like, I know this is one of the unknowns, but one of them was, do they include a penetrating test? And one says, it's offered, you know, as something else, is this extra thing. Some of them say no.
Yeah.
Actually, the rest, only one says yes and one says
Yeah.
yes on website.
Again, I would say like a penetration test is not something that you would do in an initial audit per se.
Okay,
You might ask the question, have you ever done a cybersecurity penetration test?
okay. But but that when you look at something like that, for you, that's not like, oh gosh, we can't go with them because they're not gonna do this.
I think, again, we would ask that question.
Okay.
So, I mean, there was what, 5 here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 5. You know, Mike, you asked me to narrow it down 2 to 3. I'd say pull the ones that don't have their credentials listed, right? And ask the others to come in for a presentation of the board on their services.
Okay.
That would be
And
my
if you
take.
ask 3, you might get 2,
Yeah.
if you're lucky.
I mean,
Okay.
or if they want to send us a little bit more information on the proposal, right? Maybe we could send follow-up clarifications. Like I've seen that done in bids too, where things go out for bid, and the person sending the bid out will ask follow-up questions based on what was sent back. So we could ask follow-up questions like what are your to the auditors, the people who didn't put auditor certifications, do you have auditor certifications, right? To the people who didn't answer the question about about a penetration test, does the audit include a penetration test, right? Where to the people who said unknown, right?
I was only asking to try to narrow it down more. If there was something that you saw that was just like, yeah, if you're not going to do that, then I'm not interested. So that's what I was looking for.
Okay.
One thing I did, caught my eye was the availability. Only one of them really shows a 24-hour availability. Don't know how important that is for an upfront audit. Again, probably not, but it's always good to have somebody you can get on the horn with.
Again,
when
it's
all goes
an
wrong.
audit, right? It doesn't mean that they're going to implement, right? They'll try to sell you services afterwards, and we could always enter into an agreement with an entity and say you need to require 24/7 on-call support, right?
I mean, I would say for IT, that makes way more sense than for audit.
I don't think you need 24/7 for on-call,
Okay.
or for audit, sorry.
Okay, you got enough to go back?
I will ask Matt to work with Teresa. She'll probably reach out to make sure that
Yeah,
the
that's fine.
follow-up questions
problem.
are
That's fine.
we're getting at what we need to here.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Is there a chance we could get any of that information that's coming back prior to the Thursday before the meeting, so we have some extra time, or is it,
If it's back, yeah,
Okay.
that
that would be great.
might be possible. Teresa could probably send it out direct.
Yeah.
We'll work on it. Okay, anything else for treasurer?
I think that was it.
According to the packet.
Yeah.
Clerk?
We're just looking for approval for the deputy clerk and I to go to the MTA conference for Earned Sick Time Act and the Cemetery Challenges and Solutions. It's a one-day conference in, I think, Lansing. So we're just looking for approval for that.
Okay, is there a motion?
How's the cemetery software coming?
As soon as July hits, we'll be starting that one.
So we've had that for what, 6 months or almost a year or something like that?
For what?
The software for the,
We haven't had it. We don't have it yet. It was put in the budget for this coming one.
okay.
Move to accept the class for both the clerk and the deputy clerk for the ESTA and the cemetery challenges as presented.
Support, Bull.
Motion by Hohenstein, second by Bowl. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Zoning, there's a report. unless you have anything to add.
The only thing I will add is, if you've looked at our website, you saw it, our township and a couple other townships have had some scams going around, so some of our procedures are gonna be changing, for the planning commission, and maybe ultimately some changes to our forms. So people are, looking at applications and getting phone numbers and email addresses and trying to extract payment from those applicants, so pretending to be the local municipalities. We're not the only one that it's happened to, so, but we're gonna make some changes to make sure that we try to put an end to it the best we can.
Okay. Assessors, you have a report. Fire authority, approved the hose ground ladder testing, have a company come in and do that. That's an annual thing. Need to purchase some fire hose because they know they're going to have some that fails. Passed a resolution to amend the budget by $16,000 for contracted services. Approved the annual budget, and the chief brought in his comments of he was contacted by Lowe's to see if they had any interest in a new refrigerator. They had some dents and dings, and he says, well, yeah, can I get 3? So he got new refrigerators for all 3 stations, so that was a win. And they went to pick up the new ladder truck Friday, and it is in the station as we speak. So I don't know that it's in service yet, but I think that's this week it will be in service. And had a repair for a water cooler on engine 21. Chief approved that prior to getting board approval. It was within his discretion, but it was $8,000. So, other than that, if you have questions of Fire Authority, move on to MHOG.
The construction for the cross-country main is underway. Directional drilling is progressing, and we are getting reimbursements from Spark. So that project is just shy of $9 million, and the grant from Michigan Economic Development Corporation is about $6.5 million. So it's really only $2.5 million coming out of MHOG to pay for that. So all that's progressing really well. That's making good progress. We're very happy with the contractor. Things are going very well with that stuff, which is really good news because it means that we don't have to run the plant 24 hours a day, 7 days a week once we get these in. Something that we'll all be very interested in is MHOG board provided like a conceptual approval, I'll say, of services to Vic Bond and Marshall's Express Lube in the city of Howell. So if you know, we had this situation with McDonald's. They're all on that, I'll say, south side of Grand River in the city of Howell. And with Vic Bond and Marshall's Express Lube, there's that concern of contamination potentially affecting their wells. So they want to bore under a Grand River and connect into MHOG inside inside Howell Township. So we approved it. MHOG conceptually approved it. I think we're just waiting for the applicants to come back to MHOG, and then
The city of Howell has to bring their contract back.
yeah.
Have you heard from them at all?
I have not.
Okay.
And then there were some further questions on the lime calcifier last month when we talked. So there was a study that Al was going to be privy to at the end of last month. So once I have more info on that, I'll bring it back here.
Okay, any questions of MHOG? Planning Commission?
So the minutes are in there if anyone has any questions. We had several public hearings. 2 of them we're adding additional language to the neighborhood services commercial district to allow a little more leniency with landscaping type yards. We also did the final site plan removal for, I believe it's pronounced Agape? Agape City Church. And we had a renewable energy ordinance discussion further.
Okay, any questions of Planning Commission? ZBA?
None.
None. Wastewater treatment?
We do have one item other than what's in their report. That's to update all the lights to LEDs. Apparently, a lot of them aren't currently functioning, so.
Update the lights in the plant?
All throughout the plant, yeah, in different buildings, but yeah. Yep. Motion to accept the quote from K&J Electric for $8,600 to convert lights to LEDs as presented.
Support.
Motion by Hohenstein, seconded by Doss. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Howell Parks and Recreation Authority.
There's a report in there.
Okay. Property Committee.
We have met twice now. Recently, we do have a developer that is interested in one of our properties, so as we move through this process, what they're requesting is a little bit different than what we're used to dealing with, so as we kind of work through that request and get more information, hopefully eventually this will be brought to the board.
Okay.
Which property?
Mar and Oak Grove.
Parks and Recreation Committee. Anything?
Nope.
Shiawassee Committee, nothing. Disbursements.
Move to accept the disbursements as presented and any normal and customary payments for the month.
Support.
Motion by Hohenstein, second by Doss. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Support.
Motion by Counts, second by Hohenstein. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.